Welcome to Baseball Mondays.
Hello and welcome back to Baseball Mondays. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 12 of Baseball Mondays. I have a great show for you guys today. We're here to talk about a couple different things, couple different injury stuff. Aaron Judge, the best offensive player in the sport, is going to be down for a couple of months for the Yankees. We're going to talk about Skubal, who just made his first rehab start. We're also going to do some all-star voting stuff. You now can go to MLB.com and vote for the all-star game, the starters, phase 1. All right, we're going to go on. I'm going to do some screen recording. We're going to go through each guy, see who deserves it, my picks, all that kind of stuff, so you could stay tuned for that, my all-star voting as it stands right now. Then, as always, we'll get into Nick's Monday Power Rankings. It's a new week, so we got a new list of power rankings. All right, it'll be a pretty short pod today. So as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Baseball Mondays. That is Instagram, TikTok, and X. You could also follow myself at Nick Talkin' Ball on X. Okay, so let's waste no time. Let's get right into our first topic right now, which is basically the biggest topic in baseball. Aaron Judge, the 3-time MVP, is injured. Okay, so a lot went on last week and really over the weekend. Judge was out a couple games. I believe that was against the Guardians. And then there was a couple days where it was a little up in the air as to what his exact injury was. Things just kind of progressed, got worse and worse and worse. So where we stand after finally getting a resolution on what his actual injury is. Aaron Judge diagnosed with a stress fracture in his right rib. He will be shut down for 4 to 6 weeks before getting more imaging. And then, after that evaluation, they'll kind of determine the next step. Okay, so if all goes well, realistically, I think Judge probably returns in August. But there's a lot going on here. Okay, there were several tests, including x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs. Judge even visited a couple different specialists. If you were on Twitter, Yankees Twitter, baseball Twitter, a ton of Yankee fans were really, really annoyed. I think a lot of teams in baseball do this nowadays, but the Yankees definitely do it too. They kind of delay the news with injuries, trying to figure out what the diagnosis is. And a lot of fans get very annoyed, and they kind of think that the team is slow playing the bad news, kind of like keeping secrets. I think a lot of fans get annoyed by stuff like that. I actually think in this scenario, though, they actually were just trying to figure out what was wrong with Judge, because at first it was shoulder discomfort is kind of what it was, and then it kind of sounds like a kind of injury that's hard to explain. Am I sore in my shoulder? Is it my rib? Is it my pec muscle? Where is it? Is it maybe even my back or your shoulder blade? It's kind of difficult. So I do think that they truly had to go through multiple tests to kind of determine what is it. And there was even a point in time where there was a little bit of a big-time scare because it could have been thoracic outlet syndrome. All right. I'm not going to get into exactly what that is because I am not a doctor, but I believe it is very similar to a blood clot. Okay, something that has to do with this upward part of your body. When you start to get into thoracic outlet syndrome, it's less of a sports injury and more of an overall just health scare. Zach Wheeler dealt with this a year ago. He was diagnosed in, I think it was August, had surgery in September, was completely shut down, and he actually didn't even make his debut this year until May. And I could be wrong. Maybe this is a completely different injury. I am pretty sure that this is somewhat common in NBA players, really, really big human beings. I'm pretty sure Victor Wembanyama, the basketball player for the Spurs, dealt with something like this. Not what Judge has, because, again, this is not what ended up being the case with Judge. But I believe he was diagnosed with that. Zach Wheeler was diagnosed with this. I think it's something that is common in bigger human beings. Again, Don't quote me on this. I could be completely wrong. Anyways, regardless, Judge was not diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome. It ends up being a stress fracture in his rib. So basically a fractured rib. Your first rib is like kind of up here. That's why he was kind of feeling it. Shoulder area, something like that. Discomfort. Okay, so there are positives and negatives. I know that a lot of Yankee fans probably feel like once there was a possibility of the thoracic outlet syndrome. Once you find out it's not that, it's a huge win. But obviously, it is still a massive, massive blow because the earliest we probably see Aaron Judge back in the Yankees lineup is August. So, small victory in that it wasn't something massive, huge loss in that they're still going to miss a ton of time with Judge, but still should see Aaron Judge back in 2026. The one little scary note is that they do technically say he will be shut down. He's not having like surgery or anything like that. He's basically being shut down to let the bone heal, his rib heal. And then in 4 to 6 weeks, he will be reevaluated. So obviously that does kind of leave the door open for a possible, like, once they evaluate him, that he's like not really ready to go. So that could be even more time put on top of that. But regardless, can the Yankees cover this is the overlooming question. Okay, in 2023, Aaron Judge broke his big toe. If you remember, he actually ran into the fence at Dodger Stadium and broke his big toe. He missed 42 games on the injured list that year. It was actually almost exact same timeline, June 3rd, 2023. It's currently June 8th, so just a couple, right around the same time period. He was on the IL from June 3rd to July 28th. All right, he missed 42 games, like I said. Basically missed like almost 2 months. 2 months. Before the injury happened, the Yankees were 10 games above 500, 35-25 in a playoff position. During his absence, they went 19-23, and they actually missed the postseason that year. And I know the Yankees are a super polarizing organization that is kind of criticized for not winning since 2009, even though, of course, there are many baseball teams that have much longer World Series droughts than that. But we all know the Yankees, given their history, have a much higher standard. This team should be good enough to stay afloat until he returns. They are a different team than they were in 2023, where they didn't have as much depth. That was the year Garrett Cole won the Cy Young, but they did not have as good of pitching as this team does. Okay, they obviously have Cam Schlittler, Carlos Rodon, and Garrett Cole. Just came off the IL. I know their numbers right now don't look too good, but those are two veteran guys that you know are going to be good. Fried is on the IL right now, but they also do have Will Warren, Ryan Weathers. They do have a very deep rotation, and without question, a top 3 starting rotation in the game that could actually get better at some point with Cole and Rodon getting more innings under their belt, and then at some point Fried should be back. So this has a chance to be a incredibly deep starting rotation, maybe even the best in the game. It will be right there with the Dodgers and Brewers and a couple teams like that. So they should be able to stay afloat. All right, they are second in team ERA, second in Major League Baseball in starting pitching ERA, I should say. The question is, can the offense do enough? Now, funny enough, the Yankees are actually second in Major League Baseball in team OPS, but that, of course, is because of two men, Aaron Judge and Ben Rice. And Judge has actually been cold the last 20 games or so. I would imagine it's because he's been nursing this rib injury. Okay, what they need to do, and the question with the Yankees is, can they do enough offensively to just get enough runs on the board, score enough runs for the great pitching to just win games? All right, they don't have to be the best offense in the game, but can they generate enough offense? And I know you might think it's kind of weird that I'm asking that, given that they are the second best offense in terms of OPS. But when you look at their lineup, all right, Ben Rice, he's been incredible. He has basically been the second best hitter in the sport the entire year behind Yordan Alvarez. He's actually been better than Aaron Judge. Okay, after that, you got Cody Bellinger, 848 OPS. He has been one of the better hitters in the game this year. When you tie in his defense, his base running, he's one of the best left-on-left hitters in the game. I think he's actually the best. He has been one of the more valuable players in the game this year. All right, Paul Goldschmidt. He's been great, very good as a platoon hitter, crushes left-handed pitching. But again, Paul Goldschmidt is 38 years old, and he is a platoon hitter. You don't really want Paul Goldschmidt to face a lot of right-handed pitching. All right, so the question, who can step up? Who will step up for the Yankees in Judge's absence? That's what's going to kind of make or break them. Now, Trent Grisham, 110 weighted runs created plus. All right, he's got his numbers much up to a more respectable area. For a lot of the area, he was getting very unlucky, below league average hitter. He is now above league average. After that, though, Jazz Chisholm, who's been much better really since the calendar turned to May, but still a 98 weighted runs created plus, under 100. Ryan McMahon, 71 WRC plus. Austin Wells, who just went on the IL, I believe, 51 WRC plus. Like, he's 50% worse than a league average hitter. All right, this team needs Giancarlo Stanton to come back. He's had a lot of spotty updates with his calf injury, I believe it is. Still kind of continues to get pushed back. They really need him in the lineup as their DH. All right, they're also trying to balance the Jose Caballero, Anthony Volpe situation. Caballero started off the year pretty good offensively, league average bat, amazing defense, great base runner. Obviously, the Yankees recalled Anthony Volpe at some point. Volpe, one of the more polarizing players, especially on social media, not because of anything he does or says, but just because he's the Yankee shortstop and he's kind of been underwhelming his first few years in the big leagues. A lot of people just love to crush Volpe. A lot of it is because of the way the Yankees have handled Volpe. They've kind of just run him out there, even though he's never really been a great hitter. So that situation, Caballero is more versatile, so they have to move him around. Volpe really only plays one position. Can Spencer Jones and or Jason Dominguez show anything as the two young players? All right, Spencer Jones is recalled. He's going to get a chance to probably play a lot of right field, maybe even some center field. Dominguez, who got hurt a couple weeks ago in the outfield, at some point will be back. Maybe we'll see some time in the corner outfield spots as well, and they will get some run. All right. If the lineup can just do enough while Judge is gone, this team can and will stay in it. I would bet on them staying in the race. Now, they will definitely not run away with the division like I thought that they might at some point. The Rays are going to be right there with the Yankees, and I wouldn't even put it past the Rays to actually win the division. All right, that's how much of a difference Judge makes for this team. You know, obviously they're really relying on Judge to be Aaron Judge, but hey, who wouldn't be? He is the best offensive player in the sport when he's right. He has been since the start of 2022. So I don't fault them for being Judge reliant, but it is the reality of the Yankees. When Judge comes out of the lineup, they look like a much different team. Again, they do have the makings to make up for it because you take Judge out of the lineup, well, you still got Ben Rice, who's been the second best hitter in the game. Cody Bellinger, he's been like a top 30 hitter in the game. Paul Goldschmidt's been very good. What they need, I believe, one of the three young players that they have, I'm going to include Volpe in that, even though I know he's been around for a couple years, but one of Jason Dominguez, Spencer Jones, Anthony Volpe to show something. Can Volpe show something with the bat? Get on base. He's got pretty good plate discipline. Can Spencer Jones, can some of that power that we saw in the minor leagues where he was like a 30-40 potential homer guy, can that translate to the big league level? Is he going to have the crazy strikeout rate? Probably, but can he at least knock the ball over the fence? All right. Jason Dominguez has been a very good player in the minor leagues, and he's actually showed some sparks in the big leagues of being a pretty good hitter. Can he show something with the bat? Then the other question is, these other guys that I mentioned besides Goldschmidt, Bellinger, Ben Rice, can some of these guys step up? Trent Grisham has already began that, and Jazz Chisholm, but can Jazz Chisholm get back to being, one of the better second basemen in the game like he was a year ago? Ryan McMahon, can you be just a league average hitter? All right, because he's got a great glove, but you are 30% worse than a league average hitter. Austin Wells, you're supposed to be a catcher who is a hit-first catcher who can play solid defense. The bat has gone completely backwards from a couple years ago. Can some of these guys step up? All right, one of those young guys and then a couple of these other guys that, tend to hit towards the bottom of the lineup. Can those guys step up? That will be the question for the Yankees going forward. I believe that they can. I believe that the Yankees will stay in it and will be in that wild card race and in that race for the division. And then at some point they can get Judge back to make a run at some point in August. We'll see how he progresses. Obviously, you got to be very careful given his age. But, if Judge doesn't come back this year, the Yankees' chances of World Series basically go to zero. All right, so let's go to the next guy that we get to talk about in terms of some injury stuff. Tarik Skubal, who is now very close to returning. All right, Skubal made his first rehab assignment yesterday in Michigan, I believe. It went 5 innings pitched. All right, his nanoscopic surgery was only a month and 2 days ago. All right, he had surgery performed on his left elbow on May 6th. At the time of this recording, it is Monday, June 8th. So literally a month ago, this man was going under the knife on the surgical table, getting surgery on his elbow. He is now a couple days away, maybe just a week away, seemingly from returning to the Tigers' rotation. All right, he completed 5 innings pitched yesterday in the rehab start through 54 pitches, so he was very efficient, and he touched 99 miles an hour, so completely looked like Tarik Skubal. First of all, before the Tarik Skubal stuff, this nanoscope surgery might be a huge advancement in the world of pitching surgeries and injuries. All right, the fact that he got surgery in a season, all right, and he could return less than a month and a half after that surgery is completely unheard of. If you get surgery in the middle of a season as a pitcher, your best shot at returning that year is like you had surgery in April and you can return in August or September. Like, that's your best shot. So this nanoscopic surgery could be massive in the world and in the future of pitching surgeries. I mean, my favorite team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, have not one but 2 guys who had loose bodies in their elbow and had to have this surgery performed between Edwin Diaz and Blake Snell. So maybe those 2 guys can come back on the same timeline as Tarik Skubal. Pretty insane that he just had that surgery a month ago, and we are already seeing him on the mound touching 99 miles an hour. Okay, he could rejoin the Tigers' rotation as soon as this weekend. All right, Skubal is obviously trying to help save the Tigers' season. All right, we know. I talked about it the last couple weeks. They have fallen well below 500, nowhere near a postseason spot. He's going to come back and try to save their season and, of course, show that he is worthy and healthy of that $400 million contract that he deserves later this winter. All right, so very similar question I had with the Yankees and Aaron Judge. Could the Yankees stay afloat? Can the Tigers get back into this? That's the question, bringing Skubal back into the fold. They went 5-1 during the week. They swept the Tampa Bay Rays, who have been very good this year, and then they also won 2 out of 3 against the Seattle Mariners at home. Their record is now 27-39, so they are still 12 games under 500. This is going to be a long climb back if they do so get back in the race. All right, as I've been saying all year, the American League is wide open. That is why they still have a very good shot to get back into the race. All right, but it is going to be very difficult because, they were well under 500, so it's going to take some time. And it's probably going to, if I'm being honest, unless they just go like nuclear hot and don't lose any games, literally like barely lose any games, it's probably going to line up like right when it's time for them to make decisions at some point in July about Tarik Skubal, because when you bury yourselves that much, it takes a long time for you to get actually back in the race. Like, probably like mid-July before we could look up and be like, all right, the Tigers, they're actually back in this. So it's still early enough in the season where we can't fully bury the Tigers. I had that question last week. Is it time to bury them? Not yet, okay? You guys know that this was a team before the season. I was as high on the Tigers as anyone out there, a big believer in them to actually get to the World Series in the American League. All right, Kevin McGonigal, he's been a top 10 player in baseball when it comes to F4. He's been very, very good with the bat, plays pretty solid defense as shortstop, and he can run the bases. I know his defense actually hasn't been too great, but, I think he's going to be a pretty good defender. Riley Green, a 141 WRC+. Dylan Dingler behind the plate has a 124 WRC+. Both of those guys can probably get into the All-Star game. Can Skubal come back and save the Tigers? Do the Tigers ultimately just trade Skubal? Is it too late? Those are all questions that will be answered in the coming weeks, coming months. Like I said, I was a big believer in the Tigers. I said that I would expect the Yankees to stay in the race and ultimately still make the playoffs. If I had to pick with the Tigers, just because of how much of a hole they've buried themselves in, I'd probably pick them to not get out of it. But you know that I am a believer that the Tigers can do it. So we're going to see how that plays out. But it's incredibly interesting that Skubal has already come back. All right, so let's go ahead to another topic, a fun topic that I thought I would try on. All-star voting. All right, you can now, like I said, go to MLB.com and cast your vote. Okay, you can vote who deserves to be the starters for the AL team and the National League team. Why don't we do that together? Let's talk it through. Let's go each position, who deserves it, all that kind of stuff. My thoughts, who deserves to be at the Midsummer Classic in Philadelphia this year. Let's do it. All right, as you guys can see on my screen, we have the website, MLB.com. We're going to start with first base, of course. I'm just going to go through who I think deserves to actually be the starter. I'm going to give my feelings, just a heads up. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, who deserves it. I also do include who I would like to see. So sometimes, if it's in a certain guy's home ballpark, maybe I'd give that guy the edge. I am a Dodger fan, so I will admit there are times that when I am voting, if it's close between someone who deserves it and a Dodger player that's kind of close, I might give them the vote, like, for example, Freddie Freeman for first base. But right now I'm going to be completely unbiased and try to pick the most deserving guys at each position. Let's go ahead in the American League, first base for the All-Star game. There are some pretty decent options, actually, more than I would have expected. Jonathan Aranda, 839 OPS. He's been great for the Rays. All right, take a look. Wilson Contreras. I didn't even realize. I know that he was having a great year, but a 931 OPS, that is very deserving. Nick Kurtz, we already knew him, 927 OPS. Very good numbers. Very good candidates. Even Munetaka Murakami, 938 OPS. But, of course, ultimately, the guy who deserves it is Ben Rice because he has been incredible. He really deserves to start at first base for the American League, representing the Yankees. He's been great. He definitely deserves it. There is no doubt in my mind that is the correct choice. We'll go ahead to the first base side in the National League. Jake Bauers. All right, one of the more surprising players in baseball this year. 11 home runs with an 892 OPS. That is very, very deserving. All right, take a longer look down this list. Alec Burleson, 815 OPS. Freddie Freeman, as I just mentioned, 838 OPS. Bryce Harper, 875. Spencer Horwitz, 846. Matt Olson, 877. So here's my thinking right here. Jake Bauers, I know his OPS is a little bit higher than Matt Olson's, but again, I think Matt Olson has been the best first baseman in the game this year from the start. It's still very early on in voting, so obviously things could change. But right now, my all-stars for the first base position would be Ben Rice and Matt Olson. All right, let's go to second base in the American League. This is definitely the weakest position, the American League second base spot. There are not many guys who are deserving. There are only a handful of guys with an OPS over 800. Ezekiel Duran of the Rangers is one of them. I think he's actually the only one. But he's not a guy who plays every day. 293, 4 home runs, 804 OPS. You take a look up and down this list. Gleyber Torres, 751 OPS. Second base is one of the weaker offensive positions. Jose Altuve is not having a great year. Jazz Chisholm has only been heating up as of late. It's really between Ernie Clement hitting 306 with a 786 OPS, Ezekiel Duran with that 804 OPS. You could make an argument for Gleyber Torres, but I will go with the rookie Travis Bazzana. All right, 799 OPS. I think he has been the best second baseman so far. It's either between him and Clement in my mind, but I'm going to lead towards Bazzana. Why not? I think that's an exciting story. A rookie starts at second base in his first year. All right, now to the second base spot in the National League. There's actually a lot of guys that are having some pretty solid years, but this comes down to two players. All right, two guys in my mind. That is Xavier Edwards of the Miami Marlins. He has an 840 OPS with a career-high 6 home runs. Then you go down that list, and you will see Bryce Terang's name. 881 OPS with 9 home runs. He might be the best second baseman in the game right now, passing up Ketel Marte, who has been hot as of late, but if you still take a look at his OPS, 743, there are other guys like Luis Arraez, Ozzie Albies that have had pretty solid years. Brandon Lau, don't let me forget his name, 858 OPS with 15 home runs. To me, the guy who's been the best second baseman from the start, Bryce Terang. That's the guy who will get my vote. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the third base position. Third base, very stacked position in the American League. Junior Caminara, 874 OPS with 14 home runs. How about Brendan Donovan, the new third baseman of the Mariners, traded over from the Cardinals this offseason? 838 OPS. He's been playing very, very good for the Seattle Mariners. You keep going down that list. Josh Jung, or I should say Young, but it's written Jung. He's had a nice bounce back year with an 855 OPS. Keep going down, and you'll see Jose Ramirez. Oswald Peraza has been a pretty nice story. Jose Ramirez is probably thinking to himself, finally, I have a season where Judge is injured, and he's not even having his typical Jose Ramirez season. But the guy who deserves it, Miguel Vargas, former Dodger, so I've seen a lot of Miguel Vargas, an 859 OPS with 15 home runs. Okay, and I saw on Baseball Savant a crazy story that the last time third base starter in the All-Star game was a White Sox. I don't even know how many years ago it was. It was something historic. Miguel Vargas, one of the best on-base percentages in the game, and he's been slugging this year. He's been a great story for the Chicago White Sox. In the National League, it is not as close, or I should say not as packed with candidates. It's pretty much three guys, really two in my mind. All right, that is Nolan Arenado. He's had a nice bounce-back year so far with the Diamondbacks at 773. You could include Curtis Mead of the of the Nationals. He has an 843 OPS, but the clear option right here is Max Muncy of my Los Angeles Dodgers. He has an 852 OPS with 14 home runs, and he's actually been playing the best defense of his career this year. Definitely the best third baseman in terms of WAR. He deserves to be starting at third base for the National League. Let's go to shortstop in the American League. And don't forget, guys, hit the like button and subscribe, and leave your comments below if I am missing anyone, if you guys disagree. All right, shortstop is actually a bit of a weaker position this year. All right, if you go and look at the American League, it is pretty much three young guys, three young whippersnappers. We got Bobby Witt Jr., who's the best shortstop in all of baseball. You have Kevin McGonigal, who has an 820 OPS, who right now would be the Rookie of the Year in the American League. And then you got Colson Montgomery, who has 16 home runs for the young Chicago White Sox. Don't sleep on Jeremy Pena and Zach Neto as well. But a couple other guys, Jack Wilson, not as good this year, Corey Seager, Gunnar Henderson, J.P. Crawford. A lot of those guys have not been as great. So, the most deserving might actually be Kevin McGonigal, but I still think it's Bobby Witt Jr. when you combine the full package of defense, base running, and offense. Bobby Witt Jr. is the best shortstop in the game. I think he's pretty much been one of the three best players in the game this year when you combine all things, base running, hitting, and defense. So I'm going to pick Bobby Witt Jr. as my shortstop. In the National League, again, very similar. A lot of guys have not had as great offensive seasons, but C.J. Abrams, a 914 OPS, Ellie De La Cruz, 855. Also, Otto Lopez, don't sleep on him, 845 OPS. A lot of other guys, though, have really fallen off. Mason Wynn, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson, Geraldo Perdomo. He was amazing last year. Francisco Lindor, Connor Griffin, who's on the IL. Mookie Betts has been really bad for the Dodgers. Willie Adames, who's even been hot as of late. The clear winner in the National League, C.J. Abrams. I mean, the dude has a 914 OPS, 14 home runs as a shortstop. Who knows how long he'll stay at shortstop because he's not great defensively. Probably will move to second base sometime in the near future. But you know what? A 914 OPS as a shortstop, you deserve to be starting the All-Star game as the shortstop of the National League. When you go to the catchers, all right, we'll start in the American League. Again, there are some pretty decent options. Shout out Adley Rutschman. He's had a very nice bounce-back season. An 832 OPS, 8 home runs. He's playing great defense for the Baltimore Orioles. Shea Langoliers, an 880 OPS. Ryan Jeffers has a very high 949 OPS. All right, not as many plate appearances I would imagine as Shea Langoliers, who is the clear choice in my mind. He has been the best catcher in baseball all year, hitting for the most power, plays good defense, 16 home runs. He deserves to be starting the All-Star game in the American League. We go over to the National League. There are a lot of catchers that are having some down years. Will Smith, Gabriel Moreno. All right, you keep looking up and down that list. William Contreras. All right. It really comes down to just three guys. That would be Drake Baldwin, who I believe is still on the IL. for the Braves, but a 932 OPS. That is incredible. Hunter Goodman, 828 OPS, and then Liam Hicks at 807. The clear winner is Drake Baldwin. Now, if he continues to stay hurt like a couple other guys, then he should come off the list. All right, but right now, 932 OPS. He's been amazing. All right, let's go to the outfield. This is a little bit more difficult because of the way that the All-Star vote works. A couple years ago, when they changed the DH to the National League, it used to be basically like whoever was having the best offensive season that didn't get picked as a starter would be named the DH. So like a lot of years, you would have a guy be DHing that was like a first baseman that was having a great year but didn't get picked. Now, since they implemented the DH actually is a real position. So when you go to the voting, as you can see, there are actual DHs you could pick between. All right, and so that's one of the little differences when it comes to voting. And in the outfield, you don't go based on position, like left field, center field, right field. You just pick 3 outfielders. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing. If it were to be like specific left field, center field, right field, it would be a little bit different. But you pick the best outfielders, so that's how we're going to do it. The best outfielders in the American League. And there are a lot of very good options. Randy Arozarena has had a pretty solid year. We already know about Cody Bellinger. I mentioned him earlier. Byron Buxton, 18 home runs with an 868 OPS. He's definitely in the mix. Carlos Cortez, have you heard that name? He's been raking for the Athletics. Riley Green, 844 OPS. Aaron Judge, 908. He obviously would probably be there if it wasn't for the injury. And then, of course, at the very bottom, Luke Raley. He's been great this year. Julio Rodriguez, as well as Mike Trout, a nice bounce back from him. All right, so here's my thinking with the American League. All right, I'm not going to pick Aaron Judge because I already know that he won't be there, so I'm not really going to waste a vote on him. Cody Bellinger, he deserves to be one of the 3 outfielders. He has been amazing, 849 OPS. All right, I'm also going to go with Mike Trout. All right, there might be a couple other guys that have been slightly better, but I'm also into the storylines and the excitement of who I want to see, and I want to see Mike Trout at the All-Star game, especially in his hometown. He's from New Jersey, which is very close to Philadelphia, of course. So we got Mike Trout, we got Cody Bellinger. That leaves a couple of pretty decent options. Like we said, Julio Rodriguez, Luke Raley with that 854 OPS. Okay, there are a couple other guys. Obviously, like I said, I'm not going to pick Judge. So to me, it really comes down to Byron Buxton and then maybe Luke Raley or Riley Green. I'm going to go with Byron Buxton. Why not? I like Byron Buxton. All right. You could put Byron Buxton in center field, probably put Trout in right, and then Bellinger in left. I like the way that shapes out. Let's go to the National League. Again, very stacked. There are a lot of great options. A lot of guys that are like having underrated season. Like how about J.J. Bleday of the Reds? 10 home runs with a 931 OPS. Jackson Chourio, he's been a little bit banged up, but 831 OPS. Pico Armstrong has been great as of late. There are a lot of great options, but to me, all right, I'm going with Corbin Carroll. He has a 928 OPS. He's one of the best players in the game. He's got to be in there for me. All right, now again, this is where it gets a little bit tricky when it comes to the overall positions. Because if it came down to who deserves to be in there for the center field spot, it would be Michael Harris or it would be Andy Pages of the Dodgers. But there are a couple other guys offensively that deserve it over those two guys, specifically James Wood and Jordan Walker, who both have OPSs over 922. So I'm going to pick both of those guys. All right. Again, I think like Pages and Michael Harris deserve to be starting in center field. Probably Pages would be my pick over Harris. But when you look at those OPSs, those 3 outfielders are the guys that probably deserve to start in the National League. You probably get Corbin Carroll in center, Jordan Walker in right, and then James Wood in left, something like that. You can't have those 3 guys not in it, in my opinion. They've been so good. And then we'll close up with the DH spot. And there are some good options, but I'll be quick on this. You got Yordan Alvarez as the DH in the American League. And, of course, you have Shohei Ohtani as the DH in the National League. Like I said, there are times that I wouldn't mind going to players that are in the home ballpark of that year, of the stadium that year. So, obviously, it's the Phillies. So, you could lean towards going Harper at first and maybe Schwarber as the DH. And I know that some people will argue Schwarber over Ohtani. He's got a lot more home runs, higher slugging percentage. But you know what? Shohei Ohtani, again, this is where, to me, you should go with the guys who deserve it the most. But I do think sprinkled in there should be the guys that you want to see, the stars. And if we're being honest, Shohei Ohtani is the most popular baseball player in the world, okay? And he should be at the All-Star game. He is still deserving. It's not like he's not deserving. And I think he's at, his OPS is actually better than Schwarber's. Schwarber just has hit for more power. So even though it's in Philly, and I wouldn't be mad if Schwarber got it, Ohtani deserves it. And obviously Yordan Alvarez, pound for pound, has been the best hitter in the sport. So to recap, before we finish up, as you can see on my screen, we got Ben Rice and we got Matt Olson as our 2 first basemen. We got Travis Bazzana, the rookie, Bryce Terang as our 2 second basemen. We got Miguel Vargas and Max Muncy, both guys who played third base for the Dodgers at one point. They are both the third basemen. We got Bobby Witt Jr. and we got C.J. Abrams as the shortstops. We got Shea Langoliers, Drake Baldwin as the 2 catchers. In the outfield in the American League, we got Cody Bellinger, Byron Buxton, and Mike Trout. I didn't pick Judge because of his injury now. He's not even going to be there, so no point in picking him, although he does deserve the notch next to his name, but still, I'm not going to pick him. Corbin Carroll, Jordan Walker, James Wood. I could have even gone with Juan Soto, who's been amazing this year as well, but he's been dinged up, hasn't been in there as long and as much as these 3 guys. So that's why I go with Wood, Walker, and Carroll. And then the DHs, Alvarez and Ohtani, 2 of the best left-handed hitters in the sport. Leave a comment below what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this little exercise. Let's go to Nick's Monday Power Rankings so we can finish up with today's show. Last week's Power Rankings, we had the Phillies in the 10 spot, we had the Padres in the 9 spot, the Cubs in the 8 spot, Mariners 7, Guardians 6, Rays 5, Yankees 4, Brewers 3, Dodgers 2, and then the Braves were in the 1 spot. So let's start at the bottom this week. At the 10 spot, I got the St. Louis Cardinals. Once again, they are in my power rankings. Another week where the Cardinals just keep chugging along. They are 7 games above 500 in a wild card position. All right, they are still being carried by their 4 youngsters: J.J. Weatherholt, Ivan Herrera, Alec Burleson, and Jordan Walker. Of course, Burleson's a little bit older than those other guys, but guys in their early mid-20s that are carrying the Cardinals. Outside of that, they don't do much great. All right, they're about average in everything when it comes to team pitching, offensive numbers, bullpen, all that kind of stuff. I would still bet on them missing out on the playoffs because I just think ultimately they don't have enough firepower. But they can hit. They have play great defense. They are young and exciting, and they are fearless. And every week that goes by, they become more and more legit because, we are in June now. So shout out to the St. Louis Cardinals in the 10 spot. In the 9 spot, we have the Chicago Cubs, who are only 2 games over 500. But again, as I always tell you guys, these are my power rankings. I just don't look at the standings. It is my feelings on who are the 10 best teams overall, and at the moment, it's a combination of everything. All right, so the Cubs, even though right now I believe they're out of a postseason spot, they are in the 9 spot for me. They are still very cold, 4-6 in their last 10. What's really fallen apart for the Cubs is their starting rotation has been bad, and they also have had a million injuries. They are 3rd worst in starting pitching ERA in all of baseball. That is a little scary once you get into the neighborhood of the Astros and the Rockies that have not been good. Those are 2 teams that are missing out on the postseason right now. All right. They will be in desperate need of a starting pitcher acquisition later this July. I feel like in a couple weeks we'll start to get into predictions for the trade deadline. I feel like this is the team best suited for Tarek Skubal acquisition if he does so get traded. All right, but on the bright side, they are still 9th in team OPS. Pete Crow Armstrong, he's really gotten hot as of late. Couple home runs over the weekend. His WRC plus is up to 122. I think they will hit their way into the postseason. That's why I'm still a believer in the Cubs, and they'll also make some pitching acquisitions. But they are kind of on a free fall right now. Only 2 games above 500. In the 8 spot, the Seattle Mariners, 7-3 in their last 10, similar to the Phillies, who we'll get to in a sec. They are back over 500 in a postseason spot. 9th in team slugging percentage, 11th in team OPS, and we know their strong suit is their pitching. They are 6th in starting pitching ERA. How about Colt Emerson, one of the top prospects in baseball, 19 games into his young career. He has a 144 WRC plus. They have a pretty deep lineup. Julio Rodriguez, Luke Raley, Randy Arozarena, Josh Naylor at some point should get going. They have a deep lineup. Dominic Calzone, Cal Raleigh back at some point. All right, and we know, like I said, about their great rotation. I like where the Mariners are at. They come in at 8. In the 7th spot, a team I just mentioned, the Philadelphia Phillies. Finally, they are 5 games over 500, 7-3 in their last 10. The pitching on this team, it's just so elite. All right, we know about Christopher Sanchez, Zach Wheeler, and then Jesus Luzardo is also one of the better strikeout pitchers in the game. All right, I've been a long-term believer in this team. All right, that's why I still have them in the 7th spot, and I am kind of excited that they've gotten back into this. Now, again, I did mention that what's scary a little bit about the Phillies is their lack of depth in their lineup. But Brandon Marsh, he's been absolutely amazing for the Phillies. He's been hot as of late, helping out Schwarber and Harper, who are kind of been the two-man show of the Phillies. Hopefully they can get more offense around those guys, Trey Turner, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott. Hopefully Adolis Garcia has been a little bit better as of late. Hopefully those guys can get going and provide some more offense around Marsh, Schwarber, and Harper. They're going to stay in it and be a wild card team for me, no doubt. All right, in the 6th spot, down a little bit from a week ago, we got the Tampa Bay Rays. All right, starting to regress a little bit, maybe. They were really, really hot, really, since the calendar turned to May. All right, 3-7 in their last 10. Like I said, they were really hot since the beginning of May. They are 4th in batting average and on base, 10th in team ERA, 5th in starting pitching ERA. They're going to be right there with the Yankees. With the Aaron Judge injury, that kind of makes the Yankees more vulnerable. I think the AL East is going to come down to the wire between those two teams, and it's really going to come down to just who is better in season matchups. Who can the Yankees beat the Rays in terms of the record head-to-head matchups? That's what it's all going to come down to, I think, in the end, and who can just survive, basically. But the reason I have them lower than the Yankees, who I'm going to talk about in a second, I think the Yankees have more firepower and ultimately can sustain first place. All right, so now in the 5th spot, the Yankees. All right, we talked about it earlier with Judge, so I'll be quickly, but the injury is obviously massive. They have the most wins in the AL right now, but they're just a half game behind the Tampa Bay Rays. It's going to be a fight between them and Tampa, like I just said, but they are 3rd in team ERA, 2nd in team OPS. I still think they have the firepower to squeak out past the Rays in the end. The pitching is going to be elite regardless of the Judge injury. That is why I like the Yankees ahead of the Rays, but it's a flip of the coin, honestly, who's going to win the division. In the 4th spot, the highest I've had them ranked this year, the Cleveland Guardians. All right, I might have them a little bit higher than most because they don't have that great of an offense. But you know what? With a lot of the American League teams with a lot of teams in the AL that are dealing with injuries and are fighting their way back into the postseason, all that kind of stuff, the Guardians are just one of the more stable teams in my mind. That's kind of why I like them. 2-game lead on the White Sox, so they don't have a big-time lead. But I just think they're one of the more comfortable teams that know who they are and know that they will be there in the end. 8th in team ERA. I like that the offense. I think the offense has a chance to get even better with Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan. I just like the consistency of the guards, especially with the starting rotation. And they always tend to have a pretty good bullpen in the end. So I like the Guardians in the 4 spot. In the 3 spot, it's the Milwaukee Brewers. All right, they are 2nd in Major League Baseball in on-base percentage, 10th in OPS, 1st in the National League Central, 3rd in team starting pitching, and 3rd in starting pitching ERA. 3rd in overall ERA, I should say, and 7th in bullpen ERA. Jake Bauers, who I mentioned earlier with the All-Star voting, he has a 148 WRC plus with 11 home runs. His second baseman, Bryce Terang, 149 WRC plus. 2 guys that should be All-Stars, all right, and Terang is probably going to be the starter. And 3rd best team in Major League Baseball, 3rd best team in the National League, that is the Milwaukee Brewers. In the 2 spot, once again, it's the Dodgers, all right. Now, I'll be honest. I know I'm a Dodger fan, so I'm going to try to be unbiased. I could make the argument they are number 1, all right? Because when you take a look at these numbers, they have the best run differential in the game. 1st in team average, on base, slug, and OPS. So literally the entire slash line there first. 1st in team ERA, 1st in starting pitching ERA. All right, their bullpen went down a little bit this week after some not so great games against the Angels and the Diamondbacks. But really the only thing that they don't have better than the Braves is a record. They don't have a better record than the Braves. All right. And similar to the Braves, they have a lot of guys on the injured list right now that they will get back very soon Tommy Edman, Evan Phillips, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow. On paper, I think this is the best team. I think they're better than the Braves, but I got to give the Braves their respect. They just don't lose games. The Braves swept the Pirates over the weekend, I believe, and then they also won a series against another team. I forget who it is, another good team in the National League, I believe. The Braves just keep chugging. They're in the one spot. All right, they have the best record in the game, second in run differential to the Dodgers, second in average, third in slug and OPS to the Dodgers and Yankees, second in team ERA to the Dodgers, fourth in starting pitching ERA, and they have the number one bullpen in all of baseball. They have such a deep lineup. So many guys are contributing, even with a couple guys injured right now. I think Michael Harris is a little dinged up. We know Drake Baldwin's on the IL. Even with some of those injuries, they are still just like, they don't lose baseball games. They just don't lose. It doesn't matter. And the Braves are in the one spot. So let's recap before I get you guys out of here. Cardinals 10, Cubs 9, Mariners 8, Phillies 7, Rays 6. We got the Yankees 5, the Guardians 4, the Brewers 3, the Dodgers 2, and the Braves in the one spot. Before I get you guys out of here, what to watch this upcoming week in Major League Baseball. Not a lot of great pitching matchups, so just talk about the individual matchups. You can see the Dodgers take on the Pirates in Pittsburgh this week, two pretty solid National League teams. The Braves will take on the young and upcoming White Sox in Chicago. The Reds will take on the Padres in San Diego. The Padres are just in a free fall. All right, the Dodgers will also take on the White Sox at home. So the White Sox, true litmus test. You get to face the two best teams in baseball this week in your home ballpark. The Phillies will take on the Brewers in Milwaukee, and then the Yankees will go north of the border to take on the Toronto Blue Jays. All right, so a couple pretty good in-division matchups this weekend. That is all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Baseball Mondays, and you can follow myself at Nicky Talking Ball on X. We'll see you guys in a week from now to recap the following things in Major League Baseball the following week. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed.